Hi everybody, this is Amy from Temple Seeker, and today I'm really excited to talk to you about a destination in one of my favourite countries, which is Poland. And I've got two friends, Lucy and Leanne, who are going to visit Poznan. Now, I was in Poznan about 8 or 9 months ago, and it was an absolutely fantastic city. I really, really rated it as a travel destination. And I planned to only go to Poznan for 4 days with the intention of visiting maybe one or two other cities during that time. But actually, I ended up spending all 4 full days in Poznan because I thought it was so good. The only downside for me is that when I was in Poznan, they were doing the renovation of the old town square, which was a big shame because it was difficult to get some good photos and good videos without all of the construction work in the background. But as far as I know, after seeing other people's YouTubes, I think that all of that construction work is over and done with now and out the way. So you should be able to get some really amazing photography of that gorgeous old town architecture in Starry Rhynek. So first of all, when you arrive in Poznan, you'll be able to get an Uber, which I thought was fantastic, and it was very, very cheap. So I flew from Liverpool to Poznan with Ryanair, and then I jumped in an Uber to my hostel. I stayed in a youth hostel when I was there because I was solo travelling on a budget, and I stayed at Bloom's Boutique Hostel, which was absolutely lovely. My Uber was only about £7 or £8 from the airport to my hostel. So obviously I was staying in a hostel because it was cheaper, but also when I'm solo travelling, I quite often stay in a hostel just for the social side of it as well. And I met some really cool people, including this interesting guy from Norway who ended up missing his Flixbus because he got too drunk or something. That's another story. But it's really nice to meet people and, just hang out and find people you can go for a beer with, which for me doesn't happen in hotels. So sometimes even when I can afford a hotel, I still go for a hostel. So Bloom's Boutique Hostel, if you're looking for a good recommendation for somewhere to stay, I paid £68 for 4 nights, and that included breakfast at a really nice Polish cafe over the road, and the breakfast was great, big buffet style, eat as much as you like. So I thought it was fantastic value in Poland. Thinking about the money, it's about 5 Polish zlotys to the pound, I believe. So 10 zlotys is like £2. Your money goes quite far, which means that you can enjoy lots of museums, eating out without having to worry too much about your budget because it is a good value destination. So when I got to Poland, I did a spy tour instead of the walking tour, which was really cool. I met a few other people from the UK and different countries in Europe, and we split up into 2 teams and we had tasks to do all around Poznan, and it got us walking, it got us talking. We had to do things like puzzles and finding things from maps and all of that. So I've actually got a certificate for my espionage in Poznan. It was a really good way to get to know the city on the first morning. It took about 3 or 4 hours, and I booked it on Airbnb. I think that spy tour of Poznan was only about £20. So it was good fun, really good fun. So I do recommend that. But the walking tours are obviously more historical, more cultural, and there's plenty of those in Poznan as well. So a tour like that is always a really good place to start. Let's talk about the old town. The old town is one of the most beautiful old towns that I've found. I love, obviously, Krakow, old town. I've been to quite a few old towns in Europe, and I really rate Poznan. What you need to do is time your visit to the old town square with the goats coming out of the clock at noon. This sounds really off the wall, but I love it. It's a classic tourist thing to do in Poznan. Everybody stands at midday waiting for the guy to play his bugle and the goats to come out of the clock and the butt heads. It's a really cool thing. There's a story behind it. Apparently, there was a very bad fire and they had to rebuild the main clock tower of Poznan. And after they rebuilt it following the fire, they wanted to celebrate. The council decided we're going to celebrate with a nice meal. So they hired a cook who got distracted looking at the clock, as you do. And he's got the venison cooking and he burnt it because he was distracted by the mechanisms of Poznan clock. So he decided to go to a nearby meadow and grab 2 goats and literally kidnap the goats and take them back to cook them up instead of the venison and hope that nobody would notice. But when he got them back to the clock tower, the 2 goats escaped. I think it was on the cornice of the clock tower and started butting heads in front of everybody. So everyone decided to come out and have a look, and this was quite a spectacle. People were applauding and they were loving it. So in the end, the guy who was the cook got let off for burning the venison. The 2 goats got let off and they gained their freedom. And the watchmaker of the town was then ordered to make a mechanical clock where the goats come out and butt heads. So you need to see this. It's really cute. And you'll see lots of goats around Poznan, all butting heads, because this is now the symbol of the city. So there is a really nice bronze goat statue. I think it's on Constitution Square that you can see. There's also quite a few pieces of street art, and a lot of that features the Poznan goats as well. So you'll love the Poznan goats. It's really, really cute and really nice. And you can buy the little ones if you want to take a souvenir home. You can buy your own little goats. On the town square, there's a few cool places that I can recommend for you. Just off the town square, there's a pink cafe. It's called Cafe Rosove. Everything is pink. You've got pink prosecco, pink cake, and pink seats, pink interiors. I love it. I would recommend that for a nice coffee and cake. It's not the cheapest, but it's still good value anyway, compared to UK and US prices. So try Cafe Rosove. And the other place that I wanted to recommend to you is called Bravaria. And this is quite popular with tourists. You've got a nice view of the clock tower, and you're right on the middle of the town square. And I would recommend that you order this pork knuckle. It was called Golonka, and it's like one of the local dishes. It's a pork knuckle, and they serve it with horseradish. And you can also order with that a trio of beers. So you can try 3 local beers. My favourite one was the honey one. I really liked the local Poznan honey beer. So I'd recommend that you get that and give it a try. Look out for the statues on the main square in Poznan. There's a Neptune statue and there's an Apollo statue that you'll probably want to get photographs of. And there's another few interesting things near the old town and inside the old town. St. Stanislaw Church is a good one. You can go inside and that's for free. It's got a really nice ceiling, a really nice interior. And then there's an old Jesuit college, which is a really cool building. I would recommend that you make sure that you see that. There's also a really good archaeology museum in Poznan. It was only a few zlotys to go inside. You need perhaps an hour or 2 to look around. But one of the most interesting things in that is in the foyer. So you can go into the archaeology museum and see the obelisk of Ramesses II. It's the only obelisk in Poland, and it's one of the only Egyptian obelisks in Europe. There are very few. You can actually see that just in the foyer without even paying for a ticket. So if you don't have time to look around the whole archaeology museum, then still go in there and have a look at that. It's really interesting. I would say that you need to probably spend some time in Park Cittadella. That can be more of a relaxing walk if you want some nice scenery. But there are a few interesting things in and around that park. There's a few good monuments. There's a cemetery, and there's also an artillery museum. I really like World War history, so the artillery museum was cool. There were tanks and Spitfires and stuff like that. So if you like it, definitely go. Some of the museum is inside where they've got old World War II grenades and bombs and things. And then they've got an outside part to the museum, which is where the tanks and the small planes are. There's also a few army trucks and things like that. So if you're interested in your World War history, don't miss that museum. The next thing about Poznan that I'm going to recommend for you is Cathedral Island. So obviously I'm Temple Seeker. I really absolutely love a good cathedral. The cathedral in Poznan is really quite an important one to Poland. In fact, Poznan is where they had the baptism of Poland, which is where the first Christian leader of Poland, Mieszko, I think it was, he was a religious leader, and that's where he was baptized. So it was kind of the birth of Polish Christianity. And it was a political move as well as a religious one. Poland almost had to become Christian to survive at that time. So there's a lot of interesting history there. When you go to Cathedral Island, I would recommend that instead of going straight in the cathedral itself, walk behind it straight to the museum. There's a really interesting museum there. It's got about 3 or 4 floors, and it's got lots of different reconstructions of history and things, little models, videos about how it used to be. And in that museum there, you can get a ticket and you can get an audio that you can take all around Cathedral Island and into the cathedral to give you the history of the cathedral. And then you can drop the audio back after you've finished. That whole thing takes a good few hours. So if you want to do all of it, I would recommend that you block out a whole morning or a whole afternoon to do Cathedral Island. If you're interested in religious history and history in general, you'll really, really love it. There's a Gothic altar inside the cathedral, which is fantastic. Don't miss that. So once you have finished exploring the cathedral, there's another little area that I really recommend, and it's called the Środka district. So when you come out of the cathedral, I want you to go across the Jordan Bridge into this Środka area, and it's quite cool. It's got a few hipstery cafes. It's got quite a lot of street art, and it's got one of the most famous pieces of street art in Poznan, which is called a Środka tale, and it's on the side of a building, and it makes it look like lots of little older buildings. I love that piece of street art. It's really good, so don't miss that. Next, I wanted to talk to you about food. The Polish food I've mentioned already, the beers I've mentioned already, the golonka. The next thing that I need to recommend for you is the pierogi, which is the Polish dumplings. I absolutely love Polish dumplings, and there's a place that I want to recommend, but it's going to be difficult for me to say. So my apologies if there's anybody Polish listening to this. But the place that I want to recommend is Pierogania Polwejska. I hope I've said that right. Just look for Pierozak. It's on the main high street, and you can get these gorgeous dumplings for like 3 zloty each. There's my favourites, the goat cheese ones and the duck ones. So it means that you can have lunch for a couple of quid. You want to be choosing just say 2 or 3 pierogi for a snack, or maybe about 5 pierogi for your lunch, and that will fill you up. Definitely go there. Then on the evening, you probably want to go out drinking, and it's a fantastic place for having a great night out. There's 2 places I really want to recommend. One was Pub Pomodoro, and that was quite near my hostel, Bloom's Boutique Hostel. You need to go down into that one underground, and they have all the different types of vodkas. For example, they have the Soplitsa and they have the Vibra vodka, different flavours of it as well, like the cherry, the plum. Be aware that they might be smoking in some of the bars or pubs in Poland, because it's not as good for keeping smoking outside as it is in the UK. And I'm asthmatic, so that was a little bit of an issue for me. But the pubs and the bars and the nightlife in Poznan, fantastic. After that, I would say you need to end up in Kunzia Rock Pub. It's a rock karaoke, and it's absolutely brilliant. And no matter what day it is, if you go there, you're always guaranteed a really, really good night at Kunzia Rock Pub. After all of that, there's still some lovely bits of street art. There's lovely cafes. So you will easily fill 3 or 4 days If you're thinking about onward travel from Poznan, then you might want to perhaps get the train to Berlin because it's only about 3 hours away. So some people travel from, say, Brussels to Berlin to Poznan and then fly out, or they fly into Poznan and then they work their way over to Germany or Belgium. That's quite a popular route if you've got more time to spend. But if you're flying home, you need to be grabbing your duty free. So, like me, I always bring my vodkas back from Poland. That's the Vibro. That's the Suplitzer. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. But yeah, make sure you stock up. These were about like £8 or £9 each at duty free. So obviously I bought about three. So that's about it on Poznan. If you've got any questions, please drop some comments beneath. And I hope you have an absolutely fantastic time. It's been one of my favourite trips that I've done recently. So I'm quite sure that you're going to love it. Let me know how you get on. Comment underneath my blog. I'd love to hear your stories. And I'll see you soon. Bye.